Crazy Sea Stories.
The caretaker's fingers trembled as he polished the brass plate third time this morning. Dr. Alistair Vance, director, his frayed shirt cuff snagged on a sharp corner. A bead of blood welled, stark against his papery skin. Had dabbed it away with a handkerchief already stained brown at the edges. Outside, rain lashed the asylum windows like thrown gravel. Beyond the office door, uneven footsteps echoed down the tiled corridor. Muffled. Slow. The caretaker froze mid-polish, breath held. He knew that gate patient 14, they called him, the one who screamed about bone voices in the walls after midnight. The caretaker pressed his ear to the wood. Silence now. Just the drumming rain that he unlocked the bottom drawer of Vance's desk. Inside lay a ledger bound in cracked leather. His thumb traced the embossed date, 1897. The pages whispered as they turned, brittle as dead leaves. Names. Admissions. Treatments. His own entry was brief, Elias Pike. Caretaker. Mild melancholia. He snorted. Mild. They hadn't seen the things he'd seen that a wet cough rattled the corridor outside. Elias snapped the ledger shut. Too loud. The doorknob rattled. Not locked. He'd forgotten to lock it. The brass knob twisted slowly. Elias shoved the ledger back, drawer screeching. He lunged for the door just as it creaked open, revealing empty darkness beyond. Only the smell lingered, damp wool and something sweetly rotten, like spoiled milk left in a pail. Elias leaned against the doorframe, pulse hammering in his throat. Down the hall, a single gas lamp flickered. Shadows writhed on the peeling wallpaper. He squinted. Was that ash-shape hunched near the stairwell? No. Just a heap off discarded laundry. He rubbed his eyes. Sleep. He needed sleep. That a low moan vibrated through the floorboards. Not from the east wing where they kept the screamers. This came from below. The basement, where Dr. Vance conducted his Sunday special consultations. Elias had never been allowed down there. Not once in 12 years. The moan built, guttural and wet, then cut off abruptly. Silence rushed back in, thick ascot ton wool. Elias reached for his ring of keys. Heavy. Cold. The basement key weighed more than the others. Iron, not brass. He'd polished it weakly, untouched by human hands, until now. His palms sweated around the metal. Outside, thunder growled. Closer this time. The lamp flame guttered wildly, painting jagged shadows on the wall. He took a step toward the basement door. Then another. The floorboards groaned underfoot. Behind him, Dr. Vance's office door clicked shut softly. Elias didn't turn around. He already knew it would be locked. The basement key felt like ice against his palm. Its teeth were worn smooth, the iron stained dark with decades off grime and fear. He fitted it into the lock beneath thundo-flickering gas lamp. The mechanism resisted, grinding like broken teeth. Elias leaned his weight into it, shoulder pressed against the damp wood. Click. The lock surrendered. He pulled the heavy door open. Stale, cold air rushed up, smelling of wet earth, rust, and that same cloying sweetness, stronger now, mixed with something metallic. Blood? A steep staircase descended into utter blackness. Elias fumbled for the wall-mounted lantern kept beside the door. His fingers found the cold tin casing, the striker. A spark, a flare, and dim yellow light pushed back the gloom just enough to reveal the first few steps, slick with condensation. Below, only darkness swallowed the feeble beam. Hesterted down, each step a deliberate act of will. The wood creaked ominously. Halfway down, a sound drifted up. Not a moan this time, but a wet, rhythmic thumping, like something heavy and soft being struck against stone. The basement stretched out before him, a cavernous space swallowed by shadows beyond the lantern's small halo. Crates were stacked haphazardly against rough-hewn stone walls. Chains hung from rusted hooks. In the center, a large, stained wooden table dominated the space, its surface scarred and dark. Tools lay scattered across it. Bone saws, probes, things Elias didn't recognize, their edges gleaming dully. But it was the corner that drew his eye. A large, iron-bound door stood slightly ajar. Thick chains pulled on the floor beside it like discarded snakes. The wet, thumping echoed clearly from beyond it. That was Vance's private chamber. The source of the sounds. Elias hesitated, the lantern trembling in his hand. 12 years of obeying the rule. Never go down their ward with the gnawing dread that had built since the Moan vibrated through the floor. The thumping stopped abruptly. Silence flooded the basement, thick and suffocating. Then, a new sound emerged from the darkness beyond the iron door. A low, gurgling chuckle. It wasn't human. It bubbled up, wet and thick, followed by a dragging scrape across stone. Something was moving inside Vance's chamber. Something was coming out. He took a step back, boot heels scraping loudly on the damp stone floor. The chuckle ceased instantly. Elias froze, heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. The silence stretched, broken only by the frantic drip, drip, drip of condensation from a pipe overhead. He strained his ears, listening for any hint of movement. Nothing. The oppressive stillness pressed in, heavier than the damp air. Had hymogened it? The dragging sound? The chuckle? His eyes darted to the tools on the table. The bone saw, the probes, the dark stains that weren't rust. 12 years of hushed whispers among the staff, of patients vanishing after Vance consultations, crashed over him. Mild melancholia, the ledger entry mocked him. He was melancholic. He was terrified. And he was trapped at a sudden, violent bang echoed from within the chamber, metal striking stone. Elias flinched, dropping the lantern. It hit the floor with a clatter and a shower of sparks, plunging the basement into near-total darkness. Only a faint, dying glow remained, illuminating the base of the iron door. The dragging sound resumed, louder now, deliberate. Something heavy slid across the threshold into the weak light. It wasn't Vance. It was a limb, thick, grayish, ending in hooked claws that scraped against the stone. The stench intensified, a wave of spoiled milk and decayed meat mixed with the sharp tang of copper blood. The chuckle bubbled up again, closer, directly behind the door now. Elias scrambled backwards blindly, hands scraping against rough stone walls. His fingers brushed against cold metal, chains hanging from a hook. He grabbed one, its links heavy and bitingly cold. It was useless against whatever that was. The dragging sound stopped just beyond the reach of the dying lantern light. Silence again. Then a wet, ragged inhalation echoed through the basement, impossibly loud in the stillness. It wasn't breathing air, it sounded like sucking mud. Elias pressed himself flat against the wall, chain underclutched like a talisman, every muscle locked. He could feel it now, a presence radiating cold malice in the darkness, waiting. The iron door creaked open wider. The gray limbs stretched further into the dim glow, revealing mottled skin stretched tight over knotted muscle. The hooked claws flexed, digging deep scratches into the stone floor. The stench intensified, thick enough to coat Elias' stone. Suddenly, a low, guttural voice rasped from the darkness beyond the doorframe, thick with phlegm and something alien. "Pike," it hissed. Not a question, a statement. Recognition. Elias choked back a whimper. How did it know his name? The ledger? Vance's notes? The chuckle bubbled again, closer still. The director promised rebirthings. The words were mangled, dripping with a horrible hunger. Flesh sings. "Pike." The limbs urged forward, claws scraping towards Elias's boots. Panic ripped through Elias. He hurled the heavy chain blindly towards the sound. It clattered harmlessly against the iron door. The chuckle deepened into a wet rumble. No tools. Vance took them. The dragging resumed, faster now. Elias stumbled away from the wall, tripping over a crate. Helen did hard, the impact driving the breath from his lungs above him. The creature hauled its bulk fully into the basement. It was immense, hulking, its gray flesh slick and glistening in the faint light. Its head was a distorted mockery off a skull, eyes deep pits reflecting nothing. A second limb, equally clawed, reached down towards him. Desperation lent Elias strength. He kicked out wildly, his boot connecting with something yielding yet solid. The creature recoiled with a startled, wet snarl. Elias scrambled backwards on his elbows, kicking away debris. His hand closed around something solid and wooden, a broken table leg, sharp and splintered. He clutched it like a dagger. The creature paused, its head tilting unnaturally. Bone voice, it hissed, a note of confusion warring with its hunger. Elias saw his chance. He lunged sideways, no tundo towards the stairs, but deeper into the basement, toward the stacked crates and deeper shadows. He had to get behind it, find a way past that iron door. Maybe Vance had something useful locked away. Maybe there was another exit. Maybe. The creature roared, a sound like tearing metal and collapsing lungs, and lunged after him. The lantern's dying glow barely illuminated the chaos. Elias ducked behind a towering stack of crates marked unsterilized medical supplies. The creature slammed into them, wood splintering with a deafening crack. Instruments spilled across the floor, scalpels, probes, glass jars filled with murky fluid. One jar shattered near Elias, releasing a pungent odor like formaldehyde mixed with decay. The creature recoiled slightly, sniffing there. Elias seized the moment. He darted from behind the collapsing crates, aiming for the gap between the creature and the iron door. The splintered table leg felt pitifully small that he almost made it. A clawed hand shot out, raking across his shoulder. Fire exploded through his nerves. He cried out, stumbling, dropping the makeshift weapon. The creature loomed over him, its fetid breath hot on his face. Its maw opened, revealing rows of needle-sharp, yellowed teeth. Rebirthings. It gurgled, saliva dripping onto Elias's shirt. He squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for the tearing agony. Suddenly, a sharp, rhythmic clang echoed through the basement, metal striking metal. Clang, clang, clang. It came from the iron door chamber. The creature froze, its head snapping towards the sound with unnerving speed. A low, frantic whine escaped it. The clanging intensified, insistent, almost frantic. The creature hesitated, its hunger warring with some ingrained response. It looked down at Elias, then back towards the chamber. With a frustrated, wet snarl, it shoved Elias aside with bone-jarring force and turned, lumbering back towards the iron door. The dragging sound resumed, faster now, agitated. It disappeared through the doorway, pulling the heavy door shut behind it with a final, echoing boom. The lock clicked audibly from Thundo inside. Elias lay gasping on the cold stone, clutching his bleeding shoulder. The basement plunged back into near-total darkness. The stench still thick, the silence now punctuated only by his ragged breaths and the frantic, muffled clang, clang, clang coming from behind the iron door. Something else was in there. Something that commanded the creature. Something that had just saved his life. For now, he pushed himself up, trembling violently. He had to get out, but the stairs felt impossibly far, and the office door upstairs was locked. He was still trapped, and whatever was behind that iron door knew he was here. His fingers scrabbled blindly in the debris-strewn gloom. They closed around the splintered table leg again. Useless against that thing, but better than nothing. He forced himself to move, crawling away from the iron door towards Vance's central table. His shoulder throbbed, hot and slicked. He bumped against a crate, its wood damp and splintered. Inside, his probing hand touched something cold and metallic. A lantern? Hope flared. He fumbled for a striker, found one nearby. A spark, a flare of light, weak, but enough. He lifted the lantern. The basement looked like a slaughterhouse after a storm. Shattered jars, spilled tools, the wreckage of crates. And blood, mostly his own, darkening his shirt sleeve. The clanging behind the iron door intensified, sharp and demanding. Then, abruptly, it stopped. Silence descended again, heavier than before. Elias froze, listening. Nothing. No dragging. No chuckle. Just the drip of condensation. Hesk in the chamber. His eyes landed on the discarded chains near the iron door. Thick, heavy links. And then he saw it, wedged under the leg of Vance's stained table, glinting dully in the lantern light. A key, smaller than the basement key, iron like the others. Could it be?
Crazy Sea Stories. If you like these stories, subscribe for more.
He scrambled towards it, ignoring the pain. As he snatched it up, a low, grinding sound came from behind the iron door. Not the creature. Something else. Gears? Chains. Elias didn't wait. He fled towards the stairs. The basement door upstairs was locked from Vance's office, but maybe this smaller key. He jammed it into the lock beneath the gas lamp. Click relief flooded him as the door swung open onto the corridor. He slammed it shut behind him, twisting the key frantically in the lock. Safe. For a moment. The frantic clanging resumed below, muffled now. Then silence. Elias leaned against the locked door, trembling. His shoulder bled freely. He needed bandages, disinfectant. Vance's office. The drawer screeched open again. He found gauze, iodine. The sting made him gasp. As he wrapped the wound, his eyes fell on the ledger still lying open on the desk. Not his entry. An older page. Patient 14. Subject. Thorne, Silas. Diagnosis: advanced degenerative psychosis. Treatment: experimental neurosomatic integration. Outcome: terminal cascade. Beneath, Vance cramped handwriting. Subject exhibits unprecedented unsomatic resilience post-mortem. Vocalizations suggest retained cognitive fragments. Containment protocols established. Bone voices confirmed. A floorboard creaked outside the office door. Elias froze. Not the slow drag of patient 14. This was stealthy, deliberate. He slid the ledger back, shut the drawer silently. The doorknob rattled softly. Locked. Elias pressed himself flat against the wall beside the doorframe. The rattling stopped. Silence stretched. Then a whisper slid under the door, thin and rasping. Pike, you hear them too now, don't you? The bone voices singing. It was patient 14's voice, but clearer. Colder. He promised rebirthings for Uzel. Elias held his breath. The whisper faded. Uneven footsteps retreated down the corridor. Towards the east wing, or back towards the basement stairs. Elias knew he couldn't stay. He pocketed the small iron key and Vance's office key. Hanade light. The gas lamp in the hall flickered weakly. He unhooked it. Its faint glow pushed back the oppressive gloom only a few feet. He moved towards the main stairwell, aiming for the ground floor exit. Halfway down the grand staircase, the lamp guttered violently. Shadows leaped. Below, in the asylum's cavernous entrance hall, a shape detached itself from the deeper darkness near the front doors. Tall. Thin. Silas Thorne? Patient 14 stood unnaturally still, head tilted as if listening to the rain hammering the stained glass window above the entrance. His ragged asylum uniform hung loosely in his frame. Rebirthings, Thorne murmured, the word clear and chillingly sane. He didn't turn. He lied to us, Pike. Promised ascension. Gave us that. A bony finger pointed vaguely towards the basement stairs Elias had just fled. The bone voices, they aren't madness. They're echoes screaming from the marrow. Elias froze on the steps, the lantern trembling. His shoulder throbbed in time with his frantic pulse. What is it? Down there. His voice was a rasp. Thorne finally turned. His eyes, wide and unervingly lucid in the weak light, fixed on Elias. The director's masterpiece, failed integration. A vessel, hungry. A humorless smile touched his lips. It knows you now, smells the blood. Fiki. His gaze flicked to Elias's pocket where the small iron key lay. A wet, dragging scrape echoed faintly from the depths below. Elias flinched. Thorne tilted his head again. It stirs, seeking the promised flesh. He took a shuffling step towards the staircase base. The exit is barred. Vance sealed it before it got loose upstairs. Elias gripped the banister, knuckles white. How do I get out? Thorne's eyes gleamed. The director kept secrets, even under from his creations. He gestured towards the East Wing corridor, his private apartments. Beyond the screaming wards, there's a service lift, ancient, iron, goes down to the old coal tunnels, leads out. He paused, listening to the silence below. It hates the lift, the sound, the cold iron. Another dragging scrape, louder this time, vibrated through the floor. Thorne shuddered. Go now, Pike, before the hunger drowns the echoes. He melted back into the shadows near the doors, becoming just another patch of darkness. Elias didn't hesitate. He plunged down the remaining stairs, crossed the echoing hall, and pushed into the East Wing corridor. The air thickened instantly, antiseptic, urine, and the raw-throated shrieks of the restrained. Gas lamps flickered, casting dancing shadows on padded cell doors. The drag scrape sounded again, closer now, resonating through the walls. Elias broke into a limping run towards the far end, where Vance's private domain began. Behind him, a cell door rattled violently, followed by a guttural, inhuman roar that drowned out the human screams. It wasn't locked in its chamber anymore. It was hunting down a heavy oak door, studded with iron bolts, marked the entrance to Vance's apartments. Elias jammed Vance's office key into the lock. Click, he slammed it shut behind him, twisting the lock. Sanctuary. The air was stale, thick with dust and pipe tobacco. Unlike the asylum's utilitarian harshness, this space was unnervingly opulent. Velvet drapes, mahogany furniture, a crystal decanter half full of amber liquid. A portrait of Vance, stern and imperious, watched from above a cold fireplace. The frantic drag scrape vibrated the floorboards outside the door. Elias scanned the gloom. There, tucked behind a heavy tapestry depicting some anatomical dissection, a narrow iron door. The lift, he hauled the tapestry aside. The lift door was solid iron, riveted, with a simple lever handle. He pulled. It groaned open on protesting hinges, revealing a cramped, cage-like interior smelling of coal dust and rust. He stepped inside, pulling the heavy door shut. A single lever protruded from the wall, up/down. He slammed it to down. Gears clanked overhead. Chains rattled. The lift lurched, then began a slow, shuddering descent. Below, the dragging sound stopped abruptly. Silence. Then, a furious, earth-shaking thud struck the apartment door Elias had just locked. Iron bolts groaned. Wood splintered. Another thunderous impact. Elias watched the lift floor indicator, basement, SUB basement, tunnel access, crawl past with agonizing slowness. The apartment door shattered inward. The creature filled the doorway, its gray bulk illuminated by the apartment's dim light, its eyeless pits fixed on the descending lift cage. It lunged, claws screeching across the iron bars as the lift dropped below floor level. A frustrated, wet bellow echoed down the shaft after him. Elias sagged against the cage wall, trembling. The lift clanked deeper into cold, damp darkness. Above, the furious roars faded, replaced by the rhythmic groan of the mechanism. Coalundidist coated his tongue. The tunnel access light blinked on. The lift shuddered to a halt. Elias shoved the cage door open onto rough-hewn stone, the smell of wet earth and stagnant water heavy in the air. A single, rusted rail track vanished into pitch blackness ahead. Freedom lay somewhere down that tunnel. He stepped out, leaving the lift door open behind him. A silent invitation he prayed wouldn't be accepted. He began walking, lantern held high. The only sounds his uneven footsteps and the distant, dripping water. Behind him, deep in the shaft, the lift chains rattled faintly. Something heavy had just landed inside the cage. The air grew colder, thicker. The lantern beam carved a weak path through the suffocating gloom, revealing crumbling brick arches slick with moisture. Water dripped steadily from unseen fissures overhead, pooling on the uneven stone floor. Elias kept moving, shoulder throbbing with each step. The tunnel branched unexpectedly. One fork angled sharply upwards, its slopes steep and treacherous looking. The other descended deeper, the air smelling faintly of sewage. Hundo hesitated. Thorn hadn't mentioned branches. Above, a faint tremor shook dust from the ceiling. The lift chains rattled again, louder this time. It was descending. Elias plunged into the downward fork, praying it wasn't a dead end. The tunnel narrowed, the ceiling dipping low. He had to crouch. Behind him, the lift cage slammed into the tunnel level with a deafening clang. Metal groaned as the cage door was forced wider. Elias scrambled deeper into the cramped passage. The lantern beam flickered wildly, revealing jagged rock walls closing in. The dragging scrape echoed behind him, amplified in the confined space. It was close, too close. He rounded a sharp bend and froze. The tunnel ended abruptly in a sheer rock face slick with algae. A dead end. Panic seized him. He spun, pressing his back against the cold stone. The dragging sound stopped just beyond the bend. Silence. Then, the wet chuckle bubbled up, filling the narrow tunnel. Flesh, the guttural voice rasped. Claws scraped against stone around the corner. Elias fumbled for Thundo's splintered table leg, raising it uselessly. The creature's distorted skull slowly peered around the bend, its maw opening wide. Elias closed his eyes. A sudden, violent tremor shook the tunnel. Above, ancient brickwork groaned. With a thunderous crack, a section of the ceiling collapsed directly onto the creature's hulking form, burying it in rubble and dust. Elias shielded his face, coughing violently. The chuckle was silenced. Only the settling stones and the frantic drip of water remained. Elias stared at the mound of debris blocking the tunnel. Relief warred with disbelief. Was it truly buried? Could it dig free? He didn't wait to find out. He scrambled back towards the fork, stumbling past the silent lift cage. He chose the upward slanting tunnel this time, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. The climb was steep, exhausting. He pushed on, driven by the fading image of daylight. The tunnel curved. Ahead, a faint, grayish light seeped through a rusted iron grate set high in the wall. Rainwater trickled through its bars. Elias shoved the grate. It groaned, shifted, then gave way with a clatter. He hauled himself out into driving rain and biting wind. He stood on a muddy riverbank choked with weeds, the imposing silhouette of the asylum looming behind him, dark against the stormy sky. He was out. He took a gasping breath of the cold, clean air, turning his facito the rain. Behind him, Deep within the asylum's foundations, a muffled, furious roar vibrated through the earth. Elias didn't look back. He started walking towards the distant town lights, clutching his bleeding shoulder. T-Bone voices were silent now, but the echoes of Vance's masterpiece would haunt him forever.
Crazy Sea Stories. If you like these stories, subscribe for more.